we're getting ready to film our coffee with Mr. IoT. So it'll be fun. Hi, my name is Robert Schmidt. I'm Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist. Today on Coffee with Mr. IoT, my guest is Sarah Cooper, the General Manager of AWS IoT. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you. You've been actually on panels together before, and I've always enjoyed both your depth and the humor you bring to this. Tell us a little bit about your role, what you do for AWS, for Amazon, and I want to hear a little bit where you come from, because I did look at your LinkedIn and that got me all interested.
How much time do we have? I'm GM within AWS IoT. My teams are focused on getting customers to the outcome that's promised by IoT through our engineering and services teams. So previously I had a team that built AWS IoT Analytics, IoT Events, Sitewise, which is the Industrial IoT product. And I'm just creating a new team that's focused on kind of solutions that pull all of our services together, again, towards getting those customers the outcome that IoT promises.
So when I looked through your LinkedIn, I hinted towards this. You actually are a scientist deep down, aren't you? You're kind of hiding it now, aren't you?
The scientific method is extremely important when you're in an organization that works backwards from customers and is constantly iterating. So I still use it, but I don't spend as much time working on advanced nanomaterial structures or building metallo-organic CVD machines anymore. But my customers do. So it's amazing how many times I'll have a conversation with a customer. I'll be talking about a new, adhesive coating or a new coating for turbine structures, and so tell me a little bit about what kind of coating process this is. Is this a plasma reactor you've built in the background? And it usually gets
They all go like, whoa.
Exactly. Wait a minute, phase change? What? Which actually comes in immensely handy, because with IoT you've got to have a lot of empathy for your customer. It's a lot easier to whiteboard an IoT solution than it is to actually get it working in a factory or out in agricultural fields. Or
what gets in the way? You said it's much easier to talk about it than to actually do it. I mean, we have the Amazon platform. I can get just a computer. I can get the platform. Now you have IoT services. The network is here. It's all kind of not even a cost factor anymore. It's not like I have to invest millions of dollars to get started. What gets in the way?
I think two core things. One, it's a very complex technology stack if you build all the building blocks together yourself. So I always tell people it's a 70-layer cake.
70
is a lot, right? I mean, think about it. We've got, even in the Amazon environment where we've got a really broad and deep service set. So we've got Amazon FreeRTOS that goes on microcontrollers, all the way up to AWS IoT Analytics that structures data, does analysis on top, and orchestrates and operationalizes that. And there are 9 services in between. If you look at understanding what is the best practices, it takes doing it a couple times, but most people are doing it once, at least the first time. And so being able, if you come from the device side, understanding what data to be measuring because of what analytics you want to run, very different than if you're coming from the application side going, what devices do I need to buy to percolate data into this app? So these kind of two worlds of very different vocabularies and technologies are coming together. So one is helping customers, again, kind of navigate all of the decisions, protocols, networks, all those things. The other one has nothing to do with the technology. It's the people. Especially with our industrial customers, we end up talking a lot about what I call the skill saddle. So they have folks that have been in the roles for 30 or 40 years who just understand the physicality of things and devices, right? They can kind of walk up to a gas pipeline and take a coin and tap it and go, ooh, corrosion spot right here, micro cracks. This has to be fixed in the next 60 days, not 90 days. Or the guys, you hear the story of the plant operations manager who can walk into the plant and hear the symphony of equipment and kind of pull out that the stamping machines are a little bit behind schedule, and maybe the band on that saw, not the first one, but maybe the second one, is whining a little bit unhealthily, and so that should probably be fixed. Those people are getting close to retirement. Because of a bunch of geopolitical and economic characteristics of the manufacturing industry in particular, but industrials in general, there isn't a mid-career group that's coming right up behind them. It's pretty thin until you get down to folks who are relatively new in their roles, maybe 10 years in their roles. These folks, when they went through the mechanical engineering classes, they were no longer dealing with the diesel engine sitting on the floor of the lab. They had AutoCAD, so they're very comfortable with digital technologies, but they don't have that same gut instinct around some of the physicality of the equipment. So there's this divide that needs to be brought together to take that domain expertise of those who just keep everything running well-oiled today with the digital savviness and the data comfort of the younger generation coming up. So there's a skills challenge to devising the right system, and then there's can we use IoT and digital transformation in order to bridge the gap here so that the sort of continuity of service and expertise is continued for an organization. Super long answer, but very important two pieces of the same.
Let's talk about some customers. We always get excited about some of our use cases that we do. Give us I always like to sort of have a very sort of a use case that actually nobody thinks of, but it's super, super important and one of the really very exciting use cases.
Pentair has a beer membrane filtration system that they are moving from a semi-discrete process into a continuous process by adding analytics, AWS Greengrass locally to help run some compute locally, AWS IoT analytics to look at the process and analysis around the process. But essentially, by automating the quality and measurements and being able to predict the output, they're able to run this as a continuous process, which typically means an increased output of beer, which again, hence why the engineers are extremely excited. They're waiting to hear whether we're going to be able to get, some portion of that back, which of course isn't going to happen. But each day they like to have kind of a count. How much beer have we helped Pentair continue to add in the world? One, that's a little bit of a cheeky answer from me. We're working very closely with Bayer Crop Science on a new product called IoT Sitewise. And Bayer is focused on reducing waste in our food supply chain. So particularly in the manufacturing side of the food supply chain, which is about 13% waste each year. So 39% of food or crops basically that are available for harvest. In total, we have about 39% that's food waste. If you think of the number of people that are starving in the world, being able to reduce that's very impactful.
We have a group called The Future of Fresh.
Yeah.
And what they told me was that one of the big fresh resellers throws as much food away as a fast food chain buys a year.
That's amazing.
And it's stunning. So
yeah.
Very curious what you do with Bayer.
Yes, well, so they're working on better transparency throughout their manufacturing and processing plants with the IoT Sitewise product. What IoT Sitewise does is it pulls data from your typical industrial manufacturing equipment, from data historians, OPC UA servers, the kinds of automation equipment that you find on the plant floor, and then helps add context. So these particular pieces of equipment, not just Bayer, but everybody have very simple messages that they send. Things like a timestamp when a measurement was taken, a second timestamp when it hit a server, a value like 5, and a unique identifier, usually an URL. There's no way to know if 5 is good or bad, or did it reach a threshold, or what part of the process are we in, or is this the upstream valve or the downstream valve, and if it's the upstream valve, what's the corresponding downstream valve? So all of this context has to get added in. And the context typically comes as units of measure, tags, the labels for the data. And then there's a graphical representation within Sitewise to be able to understand the relationships between the sensors that are coming in off of this floor. And then you can, once you've got that data and you've got it structured, you can actually take slices of it, because different people on the plant floor have different views that they want. Different applications have different views. So it's a very flexible system. So it's not just let me spend lots of effort doing asset management frameworks and then end up not having the flexibility in the data layer to answer ad hoc questions. So we're looking at that and then using some of the analytics capabilities to be able to predict and forecast and adapt the system.
So you said you're part of an outcome-based, an outcome-focused
Yes.
group, right? I almost want to ask, does that mean I can pay for outcome rather than for compute? But I don't think that's happening yet, is it?
Not from the AWS environment, but many of our customers are switching models to more of the outcome-driven. So there are fertilizer companies that are charging essentially for guaranteed uplift in crop yield by maintaining nitrogen levels in the soil rather than charging for this sort of typical way of just fertilizer, because obviously if you're charging for fertilizer, you're incentivized to put fertilizer on.
Yeah, why don't you sell me a healthy plant rather than sell me a kilo of fertilizer? I'm much more interested to pay for that.
Yep, absolutely.
So on that Bayer example, what is the reduction in waste?
So Bayer is currently working to understand what the full impacts are from that data transparency. They'll have to provide that when they've got those numbers.
How about the beer throughput? Do you know how much beer throughput increase happened?
The numbers that Pentair has shared with us and publicly have been in about the 3% range, and that's the value of getting to that continuous process. Really, it's the moving on to continuous process.
That's 3% they would have never found otherwise.
It is. I believe it's about 1.6 billion glasses of beer, but my numbers may be off on the number of glasses of beer.
That's amazing. I want to shift back to something. I had so much stuff that you talked before that I want to come back to. You talked about the engineer that's been around for a long time that taps with the coin or walks on the shop floor and hears something. I am curious. I think in the past we've so much time spent on vibration and current and some of those real, I call them traditional sensors. And now we are much more moving into, or I see a lot more movement into sound and into visual inspection, or really video. What are you seeing in that space, and how are you helping us through AWS IoT?
Yeah, so we absolutely see, particularly in the predictive maintenance space, we still see a lot of vibration. We're starting to see more in the acoustics or sound, almost as a replacement. And there's good evidence that vibration is still a good, these are all secondary sensor networks. So it's a way to augment the data you're already getting out of the piece of equipment to be able to determine predictive maintenance schedules. The acoustics is a really interesting one. We've seen on an industrial valve where they're using acoustics, to predict kind of the failure of the valve itself, but also to be able to measure the amount of material that goes through, because you can hear the valve opening and you can hear the valve closing. And so you can actually calculate the amount of material that went through, as well as kind of that hissing sound maybe that ends. The advantage of that is you're getting really 2 measurements for the price of 1, whereas vibration might be, vibration wouldn't help you too much in one of those gas valves, but vibration will typically give you a measure of kind of one piece of it. We are seeing an incredible uptick in visual inspection and machine learning running on camera. So specifically because we have the ML inference in the AWS IoT Greengrass product, so that you can run Greengrass on the camera. You can build a model, everything from our workers wearing hard hats to taking a look. Fender is a manufacturer of guitars, another great customer to go visit. They've got a challenge in the neck of a guitar. So they're bringing 3 pieces of wood together. And if the grain boundaries are nicely matched, they want to be able to clear lacquer it. But if they're not nicely matched, they're going to put a paint over it, i.e. visual inspection of the grain boundaries. It's even a subjective human problem to look at, what's good, what's not good. The extremes are easy to figure out, but does that quite meet our bar is tough. And we've been working with them and the Deep Lens product to be able to identify, which category a particular neck fits into. And those are interesting use cases because they provide some of the context ahead of it. So any kind of over-the-top camera environment, you can pull multiple related events from. So instance, if you're looking at sorting speeds, for instance, you can understand when is the sorter on versus when is it not on. What's the expected rate based on, how many people might be standing near that sorter. Those kinds of context, being able to get that from a single source means that the data joins on the back end are a lot easier to manage.
So, we talked a little bit about visual, and so these little drones, I fly this for fun, but this has an HD camera on it, it records.
Yeah. You're staying out of airspace, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent, good.
Yeah, no. These are actually really, look how light this is, it's kind of nice. What can we do with these kind of things and AWS nowadays? Can we put it on? Can we run it? Where do you see this go?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Amazon FreeRTOS can run on some of the microcontrollers. Many of these kit drones support a Linux operating system as well, so you can even run Greengrass. Greengrass has ML inference, as we talked a little bit about, particularly for some image recognition. So you can do, image recognition and object identification, event identification on the actual drone itself with Greengrass. And the other nice thing about Greengrass is you can do some data processing before you send stuff to the cloud. So a lot of agricultural use cases for drones. You want to be able to look, if you're flying over a field, you don't want to send all data to the cloud. What you're really looking for is something like, leaves that are browning, or where water isn't getting into an environment, or it's getting too much into the environment. And you want to look at that leaf coverage. Maybe it's pests that are causing something. So you want to be able to upload only the interesting images. And so being able to identify good, ooh, anomaly, let's capture that. Good, different anomaly, and particularly if you can bucket those before you're sending them into the cloud for further analysis, or even bothering to download them locally. Those are very useful given you want to have more flight time. You don't want your local storage to be the piece that makes you come back home.
So with that, can I get you to fly one with us?
Sure, of course.
So what we're doing is we're setting up a little course here.
Yep.
And I have my phone here. We can turn this on. And we're going to time, and then we're going to have like a little, Top Gear kind of top list, who flew the fastest, an image and a
Oh,
full
so
list.
we're not competing?
We can.
Okay.
Awesome. So I'm going to take off here. I'm going to fly through this, turn around, come back and land here again, okay? And the way this goes is you push this button and slide to take off. Perfect. That wasn't the plan. Ha-ha!
Woohoo! Oh, you've got to come back through it too?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry ahead of time, little drone. Clear all? All right.
This is up and down, this is right and left, and this is forward. So you can go forward. Go a little higher by pushing up.
No.
Okay. That's okay, we count that as fine.
Come back. Come on. I need one of these, or at least one. Let's see, I gotta go down a little bit to clear. It's a great obstacle course.
Push down. If you pull this down, it goes down a little.
Whoa!
Hang on, I think it fell right. Stop the timer.
I think it felt right. I think the control aspect of getting it back down is just never going to play out.
So I spent most of my time now in industrial IoT. We talked about a variety of, shop floor examples, which are all industrial IoT. The regular consumer out there is very much used to what they have on their devices, right? The watch or the thermostat or the light switches for that matter. Where do you see growth happening today between consumer IoT versus industrial IoT? Where do you spend more of your time?
My time is split. We certainly spend a lot of time with the industrial folks, but there are lots of consumer products on the AWS IoT platform as well. iRobot is one of the more complicated devices with a robotics background. I think they've got 500 million square feet of space that they've mapped with their robots. It's really an incredible product under the covers, and they're using AWS IoT as well as a number of other AWS services like Lambda, the event-driven architectures. If you think of a robot, lots of events to be interacting and working with. We also have things like Vizio and smart TVs and their sound bars that are connected. We're looking, I think, around 3.5 million smart TVs and sound bars by the end of this quarter. So we see a lot of these smart home products still coming up and adding more and more functionality into them. But they come in kind of two ways. One is that features and functionality, where they're connecting in order to have a different interaction and customer engagement. The iRobot's a good case of that. Same with Vizio. There are also other products where that's a piece of what they're delivering, but they're taking a lot of that data internally as well, like Amway, with 450 different product lines, looking at the data to be able to run operational analysis, understand, how their products are behaving in the market. iDevices is another one that's done, the Alexa skill set along with their device and the mobile app. And they're looking at operational anomalies across that to be able to identify where they might get service calls before they're having them. iDevices does smart plugs and those kinds of components. So it's really interesting as this ecosystem of Alexa starts taking off, how all of these products are starting to kind of come together. And again, it's that interactivity and the product manufacturer insights that are driving both of those.
What IoT or AWS IoT do you run at home?
Oh boy. Well, since we've talked about iRobot, they have an iRobot Create platform. So when they refurbish some of the iRobot devices, they turn them into a robot that you can, like a maker robot that you can build off of. So I have one that I've been trying to kit out with a camera to then kind of, in the middle of the day, just randomly identify my dog and make him move. I have a little French bulldog puppy, and so he just sort of sleeps too much. So when I get home, he's got tons of energy. So I want the robot to kind of chase him around a little bit and wake him up. I've got it so that it will identify him. I haven't had time to kind of write the program that will, it'll track him and kind of move after him. but he's, at this point, it's too easy to evade. I need to come up with a better, machine learning algorithm that's running locally on it. We've got Greengrass running on it in order to be able to kind of outsmart him a little bit, like get him to run the other direction around the island.
So the dog is too smart for your robot right now?
Yes, which isn't saying much about the dog. It's saying more about my algorithm needs some development work. I've got some humidity sensors in a Raspberry Pi. I tend to kill plants, so I wanted to kind of have an automatic watering system I built myself. I have, let's see, I've got echoes, I've got dots, I've got some smart light bulbs, I've got some smart plugs. I've got some of the iDevices smart plugs, and I've got some various light bulbs that, I've been trying to program different colors. What else do I have? I have a fairly small apartment. I've been waiting. I want the blinds that go up and down, but I haven't done that yet.
They're still expensive, aren't they?
They are, and I haven't really figured out. I only really have one big bay of windows. And I'm lazy, so I leave it down, which is why I want the automated things. But I could also just go and pull them. So one of our senior engineers, when I had the analytics team, has just kitted out his entire house. And it was our data source for some of our earliest prototypes when we were showing customers, because if you're in beta, you don't have data from, the core pieces. So we'd be like, look, and here's Sergeius, coming home, and he has everything. You wave your hand, and those blinds close. I mean, very complicated, and I think it says a lot when your partner in life gets behind a smart home that you've built. It's a strong relationship. Right
I've had this happen to me where my mother-in-law came to take care of our kids, and I got this panic call at like halfway through dinner where I thought I was super smart. I created a triple click on my light switch, except it turned off the whole house, and for some reason she triple clicked the light switch that turned off the whole house.
Oh no.
So that was a little scary. Wasn't so smart after all.
That's instruction manuals when you do your own custom programming are a challenge.
Sarah, thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to meet up with you, and it was particularly a pleasure to have you on the show today and just talk about AWS IoT and everything in between, and your iRobot that chases your dog. So,
thank you, Robert. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And with that, thank you for watching, and please join us again next week for another Coffee with Mr. IoT. Bye.